Today I wanted to cover Python tests. So let's go ahead and build a function really quick. I'll call it an add function. So this add function, it'll be very simple. We'll define it here. We'll say add two numbers, or we'll just say add, and we'll have num1 and number2. And what it's going to do is just simply return number1 and number2. So and maybe we could also define a subtraction function, and it'll say subtract, and it'll do the same thing as add, just with the parameters number1, number2, we subtract them. So a bit about, well, maybe I need to rename the file and say functions.py. That way we're congruent. It's not just an add file, it's also a subtract file as well. So, but I want to talk about testing, why we do it, and a little bit about debugging here. So a real simple way, let me zoom in for you guys. We could obviously debug with our print statement. So we can go ahead and say print adding numbers, and maybe print number1 here, and maybe let's say number1 if we wanted to do stuff like this, and number2, right? Keep it very, very easy just to see what these functions are importing, and how we can obviously do that is invoke the functions, and we can put in some numbers here, add and subtract 5, 3. And if I run the Python file here, you can see I can return number1, number2. I can see what's being put in each file. So I can say from add function, right? And basically what I'm trying to teach here is how to debug one step at a time. So you can see, boom, I can see exactly what the console's printing. I know I spelled add wrong here, but the point is we can use these print functions at each step of the way whenever we're wanting to debug. Now that's just in conjunction with the larger thing at scope here. The larger thing at scope here I want to show you guys is test. So let's say test functions.py. And in this test functions, what I want to do is actually import we need to import the unit test library. But then two, we need to import, we need to say from functions, import, we could say add, and we can also say from functions, import, subtract. And what I want to do is build you can see my Copilot's helping me here. I want to build a class that I can test these functions. And I'm going to need the unit test case from our unit test import. And here I can actually define the function I want to build. So, or the test I want to build rather. So I could say define test, we'll say add, and I want to import the self argument here. And you can see I'm getting a lot of help from Copilot, but I want to say self assert equal. And in this self assert equal, I can actually put in the function that I want to test, the one I'm importing. So I'll import add, and I'll give it two parameters to test us out here. So we have the first number I'll try 7, and the second number I'll say, let's do 9. And what's the result of 7 plus 9? Well, it should be 16. So let's actually just focus on this first test here. And what I want to do is actually build a function in this test file of, maybe I'll call it run tests. And in this run test function, I need to pull in our unit tests.main, and I'll say arg, and we want to do argv equals an empty array, and I can actually say exit equals false. And now if I run tests here, if I run this file, we should see this test be passed or not passed. So let's go ahead and run it here. Let's see. Boom, you can see test ran. We had the number of tests ran in 0 seconds, and looks like our response was okay. Now, if we have a negative response here, let's say the result is wrong, so 190, obviously this is wildly off, but let's go ahead and run that test. You can see it returns a failure here, and it lets us know that we've failed the test. Now, why do we want to run tests? Well, the reason why we want to run tests and keep a test file in conjunction with let's say our functions here, in conjunction with our functions, that's fun. The reason why we want to have a test file is so we can actually edit things. Let's say, let's pretend we're building this function out much more, and it's an add and multiply, right? Maybe it's an add and multiply function. And let's just ignore the subtract function for now, but let's pretend we take number1, right? And we actually reassign number1 to number1 times 1.5. Why? Maybe we're building a video game, and this video game function, maybe this is like a stamina multiplier, right? Who knows what the video game is? Maybe it's a 2K, right? And this is the function you trigger when I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 2K basketball game, but when you press R2 on the controller, you actually get more speed, right? So maybe it's a stamina multiplier, and this is the function of, we'll say, trigger stamina, right? Or trigger boost. We obviously need to update our function, but you could see that we're going to have a different outcome because of this function. And if we ever make edits to this trigger boost function, we want our test to let us know if something breaks. So let's go ahead and update this test real quick of trigger boost, and this will be a different thing. So we have a stamina multiplier equals 1.5. So quick math off the top of my head, we're going to have to update this a bit, but hold on, let's do that. So we'll say 10 plus 5. I think this will work. So let's go ahead and run it real quick. It's like we're breaking something. Hold on. Boom. Okay, I just needed to save the files, but you can see that the test did pass. Now let's pretend, okay, we work at 2K and someone's like, hey, that trigger boost function, we actually want to slow the players down. They're running too fast when people press the R2 thing. So you get a call from your upper management to say you need to change that function. And when you go to trigger the test, you can see what failed. You can say, oh, okay, so what failed? Either the function failed or the test failed. But either way, when you run the test, you at least have some baseline identifier of what you're changing. So that's the fun part about test, and you can obviously build a bunch more tests. So let's get back to our add function. This stamina boost function is a bit convoluted. But that was just a quick example of why we might write a bunch of tests. But let's go ahead and get back to our test add, if you will. And we're going to describe some more tests. So we'll say test add negative, right? So negative, and let's get a 7 plus -9, which should result in -2. So we can describe a bunch of tests here. Let's actually have add a few tests for us. Let's see what it comes up with, right? So we'll say define test add decimal. Perfect. Okay, so you can see Copilot's built a few tests for us. And let's even go as far, and I accidentally deleted our run test function. And let's actually import from functions, import subtract. And let's also test out our subtract functions. So let's say define test, we'll say subtract, boom, sweet. And let's have it define a few more subtract tests. And let's run it. Let's see how many tests are passing. Let me save both files real quick. Sorry, guys, kind of cruising between the two. And let's run it. Boom. So 6 tests ran and we passed them all. So this is a little bit about testing. And again, it's just an extra layer of security around a function. These are obviously really basic and rudimentary functions, but as many of you guys know, functions can get very convoluted and very complicated. And when you have to work on something, you do want some baseline of, it works. And here actually, again, with like freelancing or employment, if you're working with a product owner or product manager, they might give you requirements, and you can actually start with test-driven development if you want it, is what that's called. So let's delete a bunch of these, and let's pretend that your manager says, hey, I need you to build this calculator, this add function. And this add function, it needs to do this. Every time I press calculate, it needs to add up to 25 if I add 20 plus 5, right? So you can define that. And you might have a bunch of, and again, this is a really rudimentary example, but you could say, okay, well, my manager gave me a test, and I'll say this is my test case 1, add or equals 25 or something, right? But you have your first test case, if you will, and you might have 10 requirements, and you need to pass, let's pretend you have to pass 8 of them, right? So that's kind of common is you need to pass what's it called, a 80% pass rate. So let's actually do 5 test cases. So we'll say test case 3. So be quick with Copilot. So we'll say 10 plus 5 equals 15. Again, and this would be your manager might give you a bunch of requirements and say your function or your component must do this. And you can go ahead and actually programmatically say, well, here's what you've asked for. You asked for my add function to add up to 93 if I put in 90 plus 3. And here is the demo that I wanted to show you, that it passed all these tests. So testing can be very powerful from a freelancing, from a fulfilling requirement standpoint, from a product manager happiness standpoint, and just an extra layer of security. So I know that might have seemed a little bit convoluted, But yeah, give test a go. Put it part of your development experience, your DX, and I think it'll be very helpful for you. Thank you for watching.